Senator Roberts.
Thank you. This budget that we've just had delivered is a mockery of governance that seeks to make Australians reliant on government handouts, ensuring power is no longer vested in we the people and instead in them the bureaucracy. The world has been here many times before, and clearly Treasurer Chalmers has failed to study history. The more government borrows, $44 billion in this budget, the less private enterprise has available to invest and grow the economy for all who are here. And there are many, too many here. 5 million new arrivals in the last 10 years. 5 million. 2.5 million under this Labor government in just the last 3 years is the major reason for the cost of living and housing catastrophe. The more the government spends, the less is available for private enterprise to create real productive jobs, and the more reliant everyone becomes on the government. One Nation is offering the Australian people a comprehensive economic plan to restore wealth and opportunity for every Australian. One Nation will immediately return $40 billion into the pockets of everyday Australians, funded through savings of $90 billion, paying off an additional $30 billion a year from our national debt and investing $20 billion a year for 10 years in infrastructure to grow our economy. Here's how. Firstly, putting more money in people's pockets, more money in your pocket. 1. Reduce electricity prices 20% to save $6 billion. Currently, the system of priority dispatch turns coal-fired power stations off during the day to make room for solar and wind. Operating a coal plant this way causes damage which shows up in much higher maintenance costs and breakdowns, increasing the price of coal-fired electricity. One Nation will turn priority dispatch around and run coal plants to at least 80% capacity 24/7. We expect this power will be sold into the grid at around $55 a kilowatt hour, as compared to the average price last quarter across all types of power at 120 kilowatt per kilowatt hour. That's less than half what it has been. This should reduce power prices 20% immediately, and over time, as we build new coal plants, cut power prices 50%. The government pays for the electricity it uses, so this will reduce the government's electricity costs by $3 billion and save consumers and businesses $6 billion a year, more money in your pocket. Income splitting, number 2, to save $8 billion. One Nation will introduce income splitting, allowing a couple with at least one dependent child to split their income between both partners. If there's only one breadwinner earning the average wage, the family will save $9,500 a year in tax. $9,500 stays in your pocket. This measure will cost $8 billion a year, offset in part from tax on the resulting higher economic activity. And we expect more parents to be able to afford to stay home and mind their children, reducing government-subsidised childcare. Number 3, $13 billion in a year in excise cuts. One Nation will cut the fuel excise 26 cents a litre for 3 years and then review it to see if it continues. The ACCC monitor fuel prices daily, and I'm confident the reduction will be passed on to consumers. Fuel is an input cost right across the economy. Lowering fuel prices lowers commuting costs for consumers and transport costs across the economy, including for groceries. Saving consumers and industry $8 billion a year, more money in your pocket. We will remove the GST on insurance policies, saving consumers $3 billion a year. And we will remove the excise on alcohol sold in hospitality venues. This will save consumers more than $1 billion a year, more money in your pocket. This policy is not about drinking. It's about supporting hospitality venues and offering Australians a safe place to drink in a social environment, a community. Number 4, increase funding for the ACCC. In February, One Nation called for an increase in funding for the ACCC to enable a thorough investigation of supermarkets, airlines and insurance for profiteering and dishonest business practices. I note Treasurer Chalmers tonight in the budget has required the ACCC to spend $38 million on policing supermarkets, which will be hard after he cut the ACCC's budget $48 million. One Nation will provide whatever it takes to investigate and prosecute illegal behaviour from supermarkets, airlines and insurance companies. Prices must come down and profit margins should not be excessive in these essential industries. Number 5, increase Medicare funding $3 billion a year. One Nation will prosecute fraud in the Medicare and PBS system, which the government knows is happening, yet does not have the courage to solve. We will impose longer wait times before new arrivals can access Medicare and review drugs before being offered under the PBS that received emergency use authorisation during COVID. This $40 billion more money in your pocket will be paid for with the following spending cuts to cut government waste. 1. Abolish net zero and climate change measures. One Nation will withdraw from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UN Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. End net zero. We will abolish the Department of Climate Change, their agencies, schemes and boondoggles. Existing solar and wind contracts will be honoured. No new subsidies will occur. Today's budget reveals the whole climate scam costs the government $35 billion a year. The cost to the private sector is anywhere from $1 trillion to $2 trillion, depending on who's doing the numbers. This is a massive cost on Australian households that One Nation will abolish. Next, return the NDIS to its original purpose. One Nation will return the NDIS to its original purpose, helping the severely disabled and introducing means testing, saving $20 billion a year, and improving care. Next, withdraw from the World Health Organization and ban the World Economic Forum. For too long, Australia has been held hostage to unelected, unaccountable, corrupt foreign bureaucrats at the World Health Organization and predatory billionaires operating their puppet organisation, the World Economic Forum. A cabal which, during COVID, transferred $5 trillion from everyday citizens into their own pockets. One Nation will withdraw from the UN World Health Organization and only provide cooperation where we believe it assists in world health. We will withdraw from the World Economic Forum and the World Bank, saving around $1 billion a year in contributions, administration and in the cost of implementing policies such as One Health that can only be described as anti-human. End mass immigration. There are 75,000 people in Australia illegally, right now, mostly with expired visas. One Nation will deport them all. There are 1.1 million people here with student-related visas, which is students and their families, who can now accompany a student. Australia only has 480,000 student places, so clearly there are people rorting the system at our cost. One Nation will send home any student and their family who is not following the terms of their visa, which is to study and complete their course. One Nation policy will initially result in negative net immigration of 90,000 a year, meaning more people leave than enter. Because with around 220,000 departures a year, we will allow only 130,000 people a year to enter. 90,000 more people will leave than enter. This will put downward pressure on the cost of housing and free up homes for Australians currently living in tents or who are underhoused. Unlike Liberal Labor policy, all people who enter will be skilled. Next, education is a state responsibility, and yet we have federal bureaucrats telling state bureaucrats, telling regional bureaucrats, telling headmasters, telling teachers what to teach. Too many mouths to feed along the way and harming educational outcomes. The Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, is an OECD program which assesses reading, mathematics and science literacy of 15-year-old students. Australia is not in the top 10 nations, and our latest ranking shows a score below the OECD average. We will abolish the Federal Department of Education, including Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority and NAPLAN, to save $2 billion a year and return education to the states in accordance with the federal constitution. DEI. Last year, Reliant insurance company found Australian businesses were spending $27 billion on DEI and related mental health measures in 24-25. While One Nation supports legitimate mental health concerns, there's clearly a significant cost involved in DEI. If half of this $27 billion is for DEI and the government is a quarter of that, then DEI is costing taxpayers $3 billion a year and adding $10 billion a year to the cost of goods and services in Australia. One Nation will abolish woke and bank these savings for taxpayers and the Australian public. One Nation next will end foreign multinational gas companies rorting the natural gas royalties. We will change where royalties are levied from profits and switch to the point of production. That's perfect sense. And create a domestic gas reserve raising up to $13 billion a year from offshore sales. We will reduce foreign aid, saving $3 billion a year, with remaining aid targeted to those in need instead of being a slush fund for political influence. We will abolish the white and black Aboriginal industry. As already announced, we will replace the National Indigenous Grants Agency, the Aboriginal units across every department and agency, plus associated programs and associated boondoggles. Replace them, that parasitic mess, with direct grants and essential remote infrastructure needed based on need, not race. Based on need, not race, saving $12.5 billion and getting better care to the Aboriginals in the communities. Taken together, these savings will total $90 billion a year, $40 billion goes back to taxpayers, $20 billion goes to infrastructure, which I discussed this afternoon. One Nation's plan is a real economic plan designed to lower the cost of living while expanding the economy and restoring wealth and opportunity for all Australians.